everybody, my name is Foxy and this is Foxy Books and Planning. Welcome to my monthly reading wrap-up for November 2019. For those of you who have been watching some of my things, welcome back. Glad to have you. Again, trying out a new kind of setup with my filming, messing with my camera settings a little bit just to see how this turns out. So apologies if it looks a little washed out or a little over brightened, but I wanted to see how this would look. So November 2019, at least for me, felt like a really big month in terms of reading. And I was really proud of the amount of things and the array of things that I read this month. All right, so I'm gonna start off with, as always, what I completed reading this month. Some of this stuff was featured in past episodes. Some of this is things that I managed to do just in 1 month. And so the first book on the list is the first book that I finished since my last video, which was Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith. This is the first book in the Hell's Library series. It just came out at the beginning of October. And it took me a little over a month to finish. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars. And I did do this as part of my company's book club. And I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to the second installment. All right, the next book was an audiobook. It was The Butchering Art, Joseph Lister's Quest to Transform the Grisly World of Victorian Medicine by Lindsay Fitzharris. I gave it 3 stars, and it was an audiobook that I had through Audible. This book I was kind of disappointed with because the way it was billed was as this insight into Joseph, kind of a biography of Joseph Lister and how he basically became an advocate for germ theory and the theory of bacteria and viruses causing the diseases, not malaise, not anything else, and how he kind of championed that in the medical world during the mid to late Victorian era. And what was really kind of off-putting for me was this wasn't a terribly long book. As an audiobook, it was about 8 to 10 hours. And the majority of that was focused on setting the stage for the world that Joseph Lister was in and how medicine was practiced at that time. His kind of his discovery of germ theory and his crusade to get germ theory accepted was a very small part of the book and showed up very, very late in the book. And I would have appreciated more time being spent on the actual quest and the work that he did to transform medicine from humors and malaise to germ theory, as opposed to what I received. There was a large section about Joseph Lister's work with Louis Pasteur because they kind of helped each other out in the fact that they were doing similar research, but one was in medicine and one was in non-medical applications, and they really helped each other with this theory. I also would have appreciated more time being spent on that, which is why it was only a 3-star read. My next one is upsetting. I wanted so badly to finish this book, and I just couldn't do it. This is Kingsbane by Claire Legrand, which is the Imperium Trilogy Book 2. I DNF'd this. I made it 57.5% of the way through the book, which is about page 350, and I could not take it. This was not the same as the first book. It wasn't as engaging. The plot wasn't as engaging and driving, and I kind of go into it more on my Goodreads because that was kind of my ranting, like, exhalation of I'm done with this book, I can't take it anymore. And the primary thing is that this book feels incredibly like filler to me. Is the first book, it was like, okay, we're driving towards this goal. Got it. And so the switching perspectives didn't bother me. The constant cliffhanging didn't bother me because the plot was driving somewhere. And in this book, I feel the plot lacks the urgency the first book did. And I feel like the characters have stepped back in their development. As opposed to growing. And I did not appreciate the switching as much as I did in the last book, because in the last book we focused on our two main characters and switched back and forth between them. And in this book, we're switching between those two characters, some of the ancillary characters, so we can see everything that's going on. And I'm like, no, you've committed to just showing these two viewpoints. Just show these two viewpoints and let us speculate about what's happening off screen. And that is why I DNF'd this, and I'm not going to come back to this. I'm washing my hands of it, which is a shame because I really loved the first book. The next book I finished was The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. This was a really popular thriller from a couple of years ago and had a movie starring Emily Blunt. I listened to this as an audiobook. I bought it, I think, right after it came out through Audible as an audiobook, and I just hadn't gotten around to reading it until now. It was a 3-star read for me. I liked the mystery aspect, but the book is told from 3 women's viewpoints, and it hops back and forth between present day and other events that have already happened, and you could kind of see the twist coming, or the answer to the mystery coming. With this one, I had seen the movie, so I knew what the answer was at the beginning, but I didn't feel as drawn in as I wanted to feel by the characters. And the writing style was just a little slow for me, so I found myself constantly listening at a much faster speed than I normally would, just so I could kind of steam through this and get to the ending to see where the kind of big reveal happens at the end. But that was that. My next book was Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. This was a 4-star audiobook for me. Personally, I would say go watch the movie. The book is great, but there's a lot more attention spent on the ancillary characters, so like Astrid, Eddie, and some of the other ancillary characters whose names escape me. We spend a lot more time with them, and the wedding that's kind of the central plot of the movie kind of happens midway through, and then there's lots of kind of wrap-up action. But I would say skip the book, see the movie, unless you really, really, really want all the backstories and all the explanation of the other characters, then definitely pick up the book. The next one is another audiobook. This was Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Winspear, which was my on-deck audiobook from the last month. This was a 3-star murder mystery audiobook for me. It's the first in a series called the Maisie Dobbs Detective Series. This book was very disappointing for me. Like beyond disappointing, mainly because it's sold as the first book in a detective series, and I read a lot of detective novels. There's another one in this month as well. Actually, if you count The Girl on the Train, there's 3 murder mysteries in this month. But what I look for in a detective novel is not showing everything about the detective up front. So one of the reasons I like the Cormoran Strike series, and I like Hercule Poirot, and I like Miss Marple, is they don't spend a lot of time on the detectives' backstories. They kind of just jump right in, and if they need to explain the backstory, it's explained in a way that makes sense for the characters and isn't just like, we're going to have a huge long section of exposition. This book, the complete opposite. The first little bit of this book is the setup for the mystery in the book, and then the vast majority, I'd say about 70 to 80% of the book, is Maisie Dobbs's backstory. And then so we have 10% mystery setup, 80% Maisie Dobbs backstory, and then the last 10% of the book is the actual mystery. And the mystery is really rushed. It's not well explored because we're spending so much time learning about Maisie Dobbs. And one of the comments that I put while I was reading, I don't often put comments during my updates in Goodreads, but sometimes I do if I'm just like flummoxed by what I'm reading, was, this was a murder mystery novel. Why am I reading Upstairs, Downstairs and not a mystery novel? And that is really how this feels, is it feels like you took Downton Abbey and framed it around a murder mystery. And as interesting as that upstairs downstairs type story is, it's not why I picked up the book. It's a good story. I feel like if the right author had given the mystery section more time to breathe, I probably would have liked it more. But regardless, it's going to be a 3-star for me, and I probably won't continue on with the Maisie Dobbs series, even if the rest of the books are really good, because I just don't want to subject myself to more unnecessary backstory. The next book on my list was I'm Not Dying With You Tonight by Kimberly Jones and Gilly Segal. This is a contemporary young adult novel in the same vein as The Hate U Give, where it's about a black girl and a white girl who are at a high school football game in a small Georgia town, and a riot erupts at the football game. The police are called, people get shot, and so the two of them band together to try and get home safely. And there's a lot of talk about race relations, a lot of talk about Black Lives Matter, a lot of talk about perceptions that people have for one another based on race and the stereotypes. And it was a really, really interesting read. I really appreciated the way the book is written. So the two authors each take one girl and they alternate chapters back and forth. So you see, I'm going to get their names wrong. I'll correct myself on the names. But one of the girls, the white girl, is nicknamed Becky, but I think her name is actually Campbell. And I cannot remember the black girl's name, which is terrible. But I really liked their interplay. I liked their voices. I liked the insight that they bring to the story. And I liked the progression of their characters across the story. And I like kind of where it ended. I wish that we could have had an epilogue, because the book ends with both girls getting home. Spoiler alert. I'll put a timestamp to the next book if you don't want the ending spoiled for you. But the book ends with both girls getting home safely, and I really wanted an epilogue where we could see them reconnecting after this to see if they're still friends afterwards, or perhaps if they've gone their separate ways and kind of said, I've had this experience, but I really wanted to see if that friendship developed further in an epilogue, or maybe a second book, who knows. The next one, physical book, I know. That means I finished 3 physical books this month, 2 of which I actually completely read. It's the most physical books I've read in a month in a very long time. This is The Word is Murder by Anthony Horowitz. This is the first book in the, shoot, I've already forgotten the name. Hold on. Hawthorne in our detective stories. And what I love about this is the way this is written. So this is written with, our author is the main character. Anthony Horowitz is being drawn into this murder investigation by one of his consultants, Hawthorne, who's been called in by the Met about a mysterious murder. And they just wanted to see, like, come with me, we'll write a book, we'll split the profits 50-50. And I love how this book is grounded enough in reality that you could think that this was a true crime novel, but it's just tweaked enough that you remember it's fiction. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed the mystery. I enjoyed the interplay between Anthony and Hawthorne. I enjoyed the mystery. I enjoyed the way that Horowitz was able to kind of mold the mystery, and you can tell that he writes mystery for a living. And I really appreciated that. And I actually have the second book on my shelf, which is The Sentence is Death, I believe. Yeah, The Sentence is Death is the next one, which I have as an ARC that I bought at my county's book sale that I'm really excited to read, but I want to get some other stuff done before I pick that one up. All right, 2 more books. My next book was 10 Drugs, How Plants, Powders, and Pills Have Shaped the History of Medicine by Thomas Hare. This was a 4-star audiobook for me. So the way it's structured is Thomas Hare is a science journalist who picked 10 of the most important pharmaceutical advancements, and talked about them and gave some of the anecdotes behind how maybe a drug was discovered or how it was used and how it affected humanity. And I really enjoyed it. The reason it was 4 stars was twofold. It probably should have been a 3-star, but I liked the content enough to give it a 4. Was that while it says 10 drugs, 4 of the chapters are dedicated to opium and opium-derived products. So there's a chapter about opium, there's a chapter about heroin, there's a chapter about methadone, and there's a chapter about fentanyl / Oxycontin / the heroin epidemics. And 4 of 10 is a lot. But he also doubles up in some chapters. There's a chapter that's completely dedicated to prescriptions regarding reproductive organs, so the pill and Viagra. He lumps all of statins into one thing. And the way he's structured it is he kind of marches through the history of medicine and human history with each of these drugs, starting with opium and ending with monoclonal antibodies. The other thing that irritated me about this is there is an epilogue to this book, but it's a 4-part epilogue where the epilogue is almost the same length as a regular chapter, and there are multiple topics that are covered in that I feel like you could have just done an extra chapter. So you would have 10 drugs, and then there could have been a future of medicine, a discussion of our health systems, a discussion of pharmaceutical companies, instead of just having a giant epilogue. Because an epilogue to me is supposed to be kind of short, and in nonfiction books, I kind of expect it to kind of wrap up the central thesis of the book, and that this book did not do that. It just kind of rambled on for a little bit more. Here are all the other things I wanted to talk about that don't quite fit into this book, but I wanted to shove them in here. And that is why it's 4 stars. The last book I finished this month was All Systems Red, which is the first novella in the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. I gave this 5 stars, and I listened to this as an audiobook. I actually bought this month, kind of on an impulse. I was looking for some more science fiction-y things to read, and I used my credit to buy a different book, but I saw this, and I'm like, this has been bouncing around on my recommended books for a while. Let's give it a try. And I really enjoyed it. It's only a 3.5-ish hour audiobook. I listened to it faster. It's a really entertaining story, and I really like the main character, and I'll probably continue to read this series for a while. And also, I saw on Goodreads that the first full-length novel in this series is supposed to come out next year, so I'm probably going to be putting that on my 2020 reading list. All right, currently readings. I have my physical book, which is A Spell for Chameleon, which is the first Xanath novel by Piers Anthony. I'm not super far. I just started it a couple of days ago, 2 days ago actually, and I've been making steady progress. It's a weird fantasy novel, but it's definitely caught my interest. And this was actually my on-deck paperback book from, I think, August. So I'm glad to finally be coming back to this guy. Also on my currently readings, I have 5 Dark Fates, which is the 4th 3 Dark Crowns novel by Kendara Blake. This is the last one, thank God. I'm 11% of the way into the ebook that I've borrowed from my library. This was a book that I was hesitant to read. So I really do love Kendara Blake as an author. And 3 Dark Crowns was good. But the way so this was originally supposed to be a duology. It was supposed to be 3 Dark Crowns and 1 Dark Throne. And it ended up turning into a 4-part series. And you can tell that she's just kind of drawing everything out. And the only reason I'm reading this is because I'm like, okay, I've read the other 3 books. I have to finish the series because I want to know where these characters end up. But you can tell that this has just kind of been dragged out. And I wish we could have condensed everything down into the duology that it was originally supposed to be. My next book is called Wallace in Love, The Untold Story of the Duchess of Windsor, the Woman Who Changed the Monarchy. And I forgot to write down the author's name, so I will throw it up here somewhere. Probably as a sarcastic note of, why didn't you write this down, silly? This is an audiobook I've been listening to from my library. I'm at 38%. We'll see how this goes, Because at 38%, we're just now getting to Wallace being introduced to Edward VIII as Prince of Wales. And I'm sure it's just like, she has a very long sordid life. We need to talk about a lot of different things. So let's go through it, get it done. But I'm enjoying the story, and I'm enjoying learning about Wallace Simpson. But I feel like we'll see. I'll save my actual thoughts for when I'm finished with it. I'm working on rereading some next book. I'm working on rereading Aldous Huxley's Brave New World as an audiobook. I'm about 5% of the way in. I'm not super far. Mainly because it's been a back burner reader for me as I read through everything else. And then we get to books that were on last month's currently readings that I haven't finished yet. So we have A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R.R. Martin. 4% of the way through, no progress since last month as an ebook. I just haven't picked it up because I've been trying to get through some other books. Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez as an ebook. I'm now at 5%, so I've made 2% progress since last month, and that was because I just happened to be somewhere where I wanted to read, had my phone, so I read a couple of pages. The next one is Heart of Europe, The History of the Holy Roman Empire by Peter Wilson. I'm at 41% this month, which is up 1% from last month, mainly because I ran out of stuff to listen to one day, so I was listening to it for a little bit. But that is all my currently readings. And then on deck, I have 2 this month since I've cleared some of my reading away. I have the audiobook Code Girls by Lisa Mundy. This is from my library, which is why it's on deck. I've got about a week to finish it. But this is about the female code breakers for the United States during World War II. I did listen to a snippet of it to figure out if I liked the narration or not, which yes, and we'll see how far I can get in it before I have to return it to the library, because I'm sure it'll have a long-ish wait. This is also one that is on the Audible, what's the word I'm looking for? The Audible, or not Audible, the Goodreads Best Books of the Year in the history and biography category, which is why I was reading. So I was going to try and read through all of one category, like books and Lala did last year, but I didn't want to buy all of the books, and all of the history and biography books that were nominated had obscene wait lists. Like, some of them I'm not going to get until June of next year. So I might try and do something similar to what Books with Emily Fox does, where she reads the books that are nominated this year in the next calendar year and kind of comes back and tells you what she felt about, or what books she would have voted for if she had an option. My physical book for the month, if I can get through all of the ebooks and whatnot, is Thrawn by Timothy Zahn, which is the 4th Thrawn book and is actually a prequel to the now not a thing's Timothy Zahn sequel trilogy. I really like Thrawn as a character. I think it was a missed opportunity to not have him be the big bad of the newer Disney trilogy, but I get that it might be a little hard to get the rights. But I am really looking forward to exploring this character again. I really do enjoy Thrawn as a character. So with that, so Star Wars books. So the Heir to the Empire trilogy I've read and really loved, and then The Hand of Thrawn would have been next, and then there's a bunch of others. But so that is all I have for this month, if I can get through some of the books that are on my currently readings, because I'm trying to clear that out as much as possible. It's just really hard to clear it out when there are so many things, and so many things are coming up from the library because I've maxed out my hold limits from both of my library accounts. So as those books come in, those books take priority over my actual stash of books and audiobooks. So I'm going to try and make some more progress on this stuff this month. So to summarize for you, this month I read I read 10 complete books or novellas. I have 7 books on deck, or 7 books in my hopper that I am currently actively reading, and 2 books on deck for next month. So I'm almost on track. I think I am 3 or 4 books behind of my 80 book goal for the year. But in December, we'll come back, and probably one of the first videos of 2020 will be me looking over my reading stats, kind of giving you did I make it to 80 books or not? What did my spreads of genres, authors, page length, that kind of thing look like? And I'm really excited to do that because I am definitely an analytics and stats girl. So I'm looking forward to doing that all for you next month or in early January. With that, I hope you all enjoyed this. If you have any takes on any of the books I talked about, please let me know down below. If you have any books you think I should read in the next month, please hit me up down below. I'm always looking for book recommendations. And with that, thank you all so much. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll talk at you soon in another video. Bye!